How's it going, everybody? And welcome back to our Cisco Enterprise series. In this video, we are going to flip all of the devices, router 21, 22, switch 1, and switch 2. We're going to flip over to EIGRP and get rid of the RIP redistribution that we did for at the end of the last video in DMVPN. The idea here is to take and have an end-to-end EIGRP deployment across the board, like I mentioned we were going to in a previous video. The idea here is to show you what it looks like when you have something happen, and we're going to do a couple of advertise a couple of more SPIs from switch 2 and switch 1 into EIGRP so we get the route propagation to happen. So we'll see what a large-scale EIGRP deployment looks like. So without any further ado, let me go ahead and bring this guy up here. And what we're going to go do is on R21 and R22, I'm going to go to global config here. And right now, for this deployment, we've got RIP running. So I'm literally just going to turn RIP off. Actually, no. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play this out as if I was doing a migration from RIP to EIGRP. So let me go ahead. So that's going to be one of the things we're going to go do. So I would normally have had a conversation with the customer up to this point of what we were going to do and what the process is going to look like. When you flip from RIP to EIGRP, you're going to be going from a higher administrative distance down to a lower administrative distance. So what you can do, there are some transition mechanisms in there you could use. So my CCIE brain immediately goes, well, if you're not exactly sure what the transition is going to look like, you could go turn EIGRP on automatically and then change the distance to be 121 internally. So it would be make RIP look better than EIGRP and then go link by link. You know, do one link, then do another link. So that's actually what I think I'm going to go do. Here's to show you guys what that process would look like. So if like a customer had asked me that question, that would have been my like knee-jerk reaction. Well, let's do it this way. And now I would have tested this in a lab ahead of time just to make sure it's going to work the way I think it's going to. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to turn router so we're going to go underneath router EIGRP1, and then underneath here we're going to type in distance for EIGRP. For internal routes, it's going to be 121, and for external routes, it's going to be 170, same as it is before. So do show run section EIGRP. So now we have that set. So I'm going to do show history. Yeah, it won't let me do that. So I'm going to go ahead and okay, so when you do this, it does flap the tunnel. So just be aware of that as well. Like I said, I didn't demo this ahead of time, so I'm going based off of experience. On R22, we're going to do the same thing. So we're going to type in router EIGRP1. Distance for EIGRP will be 121 and 170. And then we're going to go to switch 1 and do the exact same thing. Router EIGRP1, distance for EIGRP is 121 and 170. And then I have to bring up switch 2. And I'll slide that all the way over here. A lot of devices in this environment, so it takes a moment. Okay, so I'm going to go up here, do the same thing here. Router EIGRP1, distance for EIGRP 121 and 170. Okay, now that I have that done, what I'm going to go do is turn on EIGRP for the directly connected links. So if I go over to, let me scoot this over a little bit, and we should be able to get 58 in here. 50, 33, why is 33 all the way over here? 33 should be right there. So for 58, we can see both tunnels, or both adjacencies are back up. Show IP route EIGRP. So we're receiving subnets from across the wire, which is what we want to see. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up the adjacencies for EIGRP. So we'll do that on R21. We'll do that. So normally you would do this from the furthest away from where you're at. So let's say, for example, I am coming in over VPN from the HQ site, and then I'm riding over MPLS VPN over to this site, for example. So I'm going that route because there's no local VPN connection here, for example. Well, what I would end up doing is I would work my way out from where I'm at. So I would work my way back into the edge. I wouldn't start at the edge and work my way in because I'd want to be able to still maintain connectivity to the edge. So let's go to switch 2. And what I'm going to do here is type in network of 10.1.0.0, 0.0.255.255, and 10.2. And then I'll go over to switch 2 and do the exact same, or sorry, switch 1. I'll do the same thing there. So I'll type in network by do show IP interface brief. So I'll type in network 10.1.0.0, 0.255, 0.255.255. And then I'll go over to R21 and I'll type in network of 10. So I'm on 21. 10.1.0.0, 0.0.255.255. So I should form an adjacency with both switches. And then on R22, we'll do a network of 10.2.0.0, or sorry, 10.1.0.0, 0.0.255.255, and then we'll do 10.2. Same thing on 21. Just like that. Now that I've got that up and running, if I look at switch 1, I should have adjacency up, but if I do show IP route, we should still be routing via RIP, which we are. We're still routing via RIP. So we're good to go there. Now what I'm gonna go do on both 21, and you gotta take into consideration the default routes as well. Even though we're not doing any configuration on 21 and 22 to send traffic to the internet, you still got to keep that in the back of your mind. So, meaning you want to be able to provide a EIGRP default route. So underneath here we're going to type in, if we do show run section RIP, we're doing a default information originate. I'm going to do the exact same thing here. I'm going to type in default dash information originate. Actually, I take that back. I'll do a redistribute, do show IP, do show run pipe include IP route. There should be a static default here, and there is. So I'm going to redistribute static via the metric of this guy right here. Since it's already right there, I'm going to do that there. And I'll do the same thing on 22. So if I go to switch 1, for example, and I do show IP EIGRP topology, I'm looking for a default route, which I have it right there. Even though these are all infinity because they're not being used, that's still there. If I go to switch 2, I should get the same thing. So do show IP EIGRP topology. And I'm getting a default route there. So I'm just going to go ahead and redistribute static there as well, just so we have equal routes. So now that I've done all of that, the next thing for me to go do would be I could go to switch 1, for example, and underneath RIP, router RIP, I can come underneath here and type in distance for this particular protocol would be, let's say, 125, and hit the enter key. Now if I do that, and then I type in do show IP route, it might take okay, so that, oh wait, hold on. do show run section RIP. Okay, it did take correctly. So my intention would be to modify the I'm curious as to why I didn't flip over, because my thought would have been like, well, let's just bump the so what I could do is turn RIP off on one of the upstream routers. So normally the distance is what you would want to throw in on switch 1. So if I go to, I'm actually surprised it didn't work. So like legit surprised. Oh, okay, so the timers are going up. So okay, so it wasn't an immediate trigger, but the timers are going up. So we might have a reachability issue here, but so if I was to do the 125 and the timers go up, eventually they will age out. Now if I do this and say no distance 125, hopefully that will fix this. I could go back to EIGRP and lower the distance to be 90. So we'll go router EIGRP 1 and we'll type in distance EIGRP, we'll say 90, 170. And then hopefully that will trigger. We'll see if it actually does. I'm looking for anything. Oh, okay. So EIGRP flapped. And then that EIGRP is coming through, which is what I wanted to have happen. So everything's looking good so far. So switch 1's looking good. So it took over. It wasn't clean, but it took over. And we have a default route through RIP though. Still. So if I hit the up arrow, I expect to eventually have that come through as EIGRP. So we'll take that into consideration. So what I'm going to go do now is on switch 2, do the exact same thing. So we're going to go to do show IP route, and the RIP is there. So what I would do, now there's a question, well, how would you verify any of this on the remote side? Well, what you would do is you'd have something on the other side. For example, you do show IP route, and you would expect to see stuff coming through. Notice how we're still getting this through external EIGRP. So what I would do is I would do a consistent ping to 172.31.5. What is that IP address on this side here? Do show IP interface brief 5.1. So on 58, 5.1 repeat, let's say 100 times. I can still ping it, right? But I would have somebody from their laptop or what have you, I'd have them pinging across the wire to make sure that it's actually reachable while we're doing all these changes. So on switch 2, do show run section EIGRP, and now I want to flip over to EIGRP. I would say no distance this, pull this out, and then once I do that, do show IP route. We'll see if it flaps. There flaps. Why does it flap? I actually don't know. So we'll do a, so now EIGRP is coming through. And if I go back over here to 58 and I hit the up arrow, we still have reachability. If I do a show IP route, it's still coming in across as an EIGRP external route. And that's because RIP's still enabled, right? RIP is still doing all that stuff. So if I go to R21, for example, and I do show IP route, we still have a static route, we still have a RIP, we're still learning this from RIP. So what I would do is on switch 1, I would do show run pipe section, do show run pipe section EIGRP, and then underneath router EIGRP1, I would need to type in here network 172.31.0.0, 0.0.255.0.255. What says basically anything 172.31, go ahead and enable. So we're going to start doing that from switch 1 and from switch 2. do show run section EIGRP, router EIGRP1 network 172.31.0.0, 0.255, 0.255.255. Oh, I did the redistributed static metric on the wrong box. So I need to pull this out. That explains why it's not coming across. So I don't need to redistribute static on here or on switch 1. So do show run section EIGRP. I need to do redistribute static on 21. Do show run section EIGRP. Okay, good. So now if I go back to switch 1, do show IP route, it's still coming through as EIGRP, or I'm sorry, as RIP. But as you can see, I have EIGRP routes coming across, and if I go to 58 now and I hit the up arrow, we should see this /21 is coming across as EIGRP. Now that's because I still have RIP still enabled. So if I was to go to say R21 and say no redistribute RIP, and then go to 22, do the same thing. I don't think I'm doing, so do show run section EIGRP. Yeah, I'm not redistributing RIP on this one. But this one here, I'm still doing EIGRP, so let me go back to here. And no distance EIGRP 121. And do the make sure that it's not, and then do the same thing here. No, and pull this out. So we're going to let that stabilize. Instead of just turning off the protocol and flipping over to EIGRP, we're going to let them run at the same time. So if you have to fall back, all you have to do is go through and turn a network statement back on, or adjust the distance, something like that. So it's going to flap. That's okay though. So we go back to 58, and I hit the up arrow, do a show IP route. Now I'm receiving 172.31.5 via both of these routers. So I have equal cost multipath going across the tunnel. So that's pretty straightforward. As you can see, it's end-to-end now. And I have no more RIP learned default route or summaries or anything like that going on. So now that we have that in play, we're in a good spot. Go back to R22, everything's looking good, pretty good. If I go back to switch 1, and I do show run pipe section router, I can turn RIP off at this point, because now I've completely migrated. Actually, no, I take that back. Let me do show IP route. I'm still getting my default route through RIP. So, and I still have, let me look on 21, and let me go router EIGRP1, no redistribute RIP, or sorry, router RIP, no redistribute EIGRP1 metric 2. So I need to figure out why I am still do show run section EIGRP. Okay, that looks pretty clean. And then hit this up arrow again, go to the end, pull those out. Good. So now let's go back to switch 1. Why am I still getting a RIP? Let's see if that ages out. I'm waiting for the 30-second. Okay, so there's still some active RIP going on. The thing is, if I go to switch 1 and I turn RIP off for the 10 network, well, I lose my default route. So if I do show IP EIGRP topology, I am getting a default route right here, but it's infinity. So the feasible distance is infinity. So what is going on here? Same thing with switch 2. Do show IP route. Let me go ahead and on R21, let me go underneath router RIP, do show run section RIP, and type in no default information originate. Let's see if that doesn't help. So we'll do that. Go back to switch 1, hit the up arrow. Okay, 20. Okay, so it stops advertising. I might have to go down to the interface level of gig 00 and gig 01 on R21 and R22 and do a summary address. For whatever reason, the static redistribute static is not triggering for some reason. And I'm not exactly sure why. Let's take a look at that actually. Redistribute static. So it's, why is that not triggering? I don't know. That doesn't make any sense to me. So to fix this on 21, I'm going to go to interface range gig 0/0 through 1. I'm going to type in IP summary address EIGRP 1, and I'm going to specify 0.0.0.0/0 and hit the enter key. Switch 1 and 2 will both get this. So if I do a topology check and look for the default route, it's still coming through as a default, but if I do show IP route, it's coming through still. So do show run section EIGRP. We're not doing anything fancy there. Let me go router EIGRP1 and do a network of 10.2.0.0, 0.0.255.255. That should form an adjacency with, well, actually, it shouldn't matter because I got everything 10.1. So I can take that out. I don't need that. So I'm legit surprised that I am learning a default route from RIP but not EIGRP. Why is that happening? Do show IP route. Interesting. Okay, I'm actually legit surprised that this is happening the way that it is. I don't get it. It doesn't make sense to me. So I'm missing something, and I'm not exactly sure where. So, and I did a summary address. So let me go on to 22 and do show run pipe section RIP under router RIP, and I'm going to go ahead and say no redistribute static metric transparent. And so switch 1 so as soon as that update comes through, and did I enable on switch 2? Did I enable RIP for 172.31? Do show run section EIGRP? Yes, I did. So he should be able to propagate anything to router 1. So let's go back to do show IP route. Still learning the default route from RIP. That's a concern because he shouldn't be. Let me go back to 2022. Do show run section RIP. No redistribute static. Sometimes that's what's needed. And let's look at 1. There's, okay, EIGRP is now coming through. That's just weird. Oh, okay. I don't know why it didn't dawn on me, but the administrative distance was the problem. So let me go back. Okay, so now that I see it and it's obvious to me now, to fix that, you'd have to bump you'd have to go underneath RIP and bump those routes. So let me go fix that real quick. On 21, let me go ahead and pull this out. See if that makes a difference. It's going to resync the neighbors, but I should see, yeah, I should see the route coming through as a default route through default information originate underneath this guy. So do show run section EIGRP. Redistribute static, I meant. That's what I should say. So the redistribute static is coming through. Now to go back underneath the RIP, so router RIP, and default dash information originate, and then I go back to switch 1, and then I get the RIP route. What I had to go underneath here and type is router RIP, and I need to type in distance is going to be like 190 or something like that. So then I do show IP route, and then after, but it's a slow transition, right? It takes time for that to trigger. So once we get past 30 seconds, notice how the other RIP routes are starting to, their timers are starting to increment, right? We're here at 37 seconds when we should never go above 30. So that's one thing you could do, or just stop doing the advertisement. So I'm gonna pull the distance command out, and then I'll just go back to 21 and stop doing this, and then go back to switch 1, hit the up arrow, and now we're EIGRP. So we're good to go there. So we're still getting a /21 from switch 2. Do show IP route, that looks good. We're still getting a, oh, that's because RIP is still enabled for that network. So what I'm gonna do here, which it shouldn't be, did I enable it for both? Do show run section EIGRP, 172.31, do show run section EIGRP. I did do it there too, 172.31. So why is that RIP route still coming through as a RIP route? I'm not actually sure. Let me go to on switch 1, do show run section RIP, and underneath router RIP, no network, this guy, and the same thing on switch 2. Let's do RIP. We're gonna go underneath router RIP, no, and then no network. Okay, so now that I've done that, if we do show IP route, and now the /32 is still coming through, but okay, so the host routes are coming through as RIP. So on switch 1 and switch 2, I'm just going to say no router RIP. Sometimes it's easier just to do that. And then no router RIP. We'll just go ahead and pull the plug. And on 21, if we hit the up arrow, do show IP route, those timers should eventually time out. And I'm expecting them to time out here pretty quickly. Yep, they're going to time out. So let me just check to see if anything else RIP. Okay, that looks better. RIP for the 22. So I'm just going to go ahead and say no router RIP here. And on 22, no router RIP here either. So do show IP route. So we're going to see everything come through as /32 routes. Or I'm sorry, everything will come through as EIGRP at this point. So I'm looking for, let me double check on switch 2. Oh, I know why. So 10.1, okay, that's my fault. So right here, I was only being specific for that guy. So underneath router EIGRP, EIGRP1, I would need to type in a network statement for 10.0.0.1, 0.0.0.0 for the loopback. And the same thing here. So router EIGRP1, network of 10.0.0.2, 0.0.0.0. Now if I go back to 21 and I hit the up arrow, do show IP route, now I see 1 and 2 coming through as EIGRP routes. I don't know why I was missing that either. But so now we've gotten rid of all of our RIP learned routes and everything looks pretty good. So Normally I would be doing this on the fly. I would have already figured all this stuff out and been squared away. But, you know, no harm, no foul. So now we have converted from RIP to EIGRP at this site. And if we go over to, say, let me move this guy over. And let's look at, say, switch 7. Pull up switch 7. We're going to do a show IP route here. And we're going to have there's no default route yet, but that's okay. I'm looking at all of the communications that we have going on, and everything is looking pretty good. We have prefixes coming across where we need them to. One of the things that I'm going to jump back over on switch 1 and switch 2 and do is I'm going to create these SPIs here and advertise them into EIGRP so we have a full propagation of routes. So I'm going to go on switch 1 and do show IP interface brief. We're going to go interface VLAN 1316. Type an IP address here is going to be 172.31.16.1/24. I'm going to no shut it. And I'm going to go do show history. And I am going to copy all of that over to switch 2 minus, and change the IP address on this guy to be .2, and then no shut. And if I go to switch 7, it's way over here, I should see a 172.31.16 coming across. Oh, sorry, I meant to say not 16, 6. My mistake. So we'll do 6.1. And then we'll do 6.2. So I'm actually glad that happened. So what you're going to see here is it says that neighbor info, neighbor 172.31.6.1, VLAN 1316 is blocked, not on common subnet. What exactly does that mean? I forgot to mention this. What that means is that in order for EIGRP and OSPF, RIP, ISIS, in order for any of those protocols to form an adjacency with each other inside of the same VLAN, they must be on the same subnet. So if they're not on the same subnet, that's what that issue is. So just a different IP address. So we've got that there going, so that's good. So I'm going to go ahead up here and I'm going to go to interface VLAN 1318. Give that a second here. And we're going to go 8.2 and then no shut. That brings that up, and then 13.19. And then we're going to give that a 9.2. And then no shut that one. Now the last thing I'm going to do is if we go and do show history, and I'm going to CCIE pro tip here. If I take this config right here and copy it into Notepad, and then I adjust this to be .1 and this to be .1, I'm going to show you why you don't want to do this without doing a little bit of configuration ahead of time. I'm going to copy and paste that in. So that'll come on. Notice that we form adjacencies here, right? I believe I mentioned this elsewhere. Let me turn the options, session options, and audio bell off. Don't like the audio bell. Anyway, so what we want to do here is we don't want to form an EIGRP adjacency over between the switches, right? We want the subnets that are reachable behind the switches to be advertised, but the switches themselves we don't want to form an adjacency with. So to fix that, what I'm going to go ahead and do is on switch 1, or switch 7 I should say, or switch 1, options, session options. I don't know why the bell is there. The bell is the most annoying thing in the world as far as I'm concerned. Options, session options. I wish there was a global way to turn this off. Maybe there is in a newer version. I'm going to go ahead and go to router EIGRP1, and I'm going to type in passive interface for VLAN 1315, 1316, 1318, and 1319. So do show run section EIGRP. I'm just going to copy and paste this config into switch 1. Just like router EIGRP1. Just like that. I don't want form an adjacency over EIGRP between switch 1 and switch 2. I just want to propagate the routes. Now if I jump back over to switch 7 and I do a show IP route, you're going to see all 3 of these subnets coming across. So if I do a ping 172.31.5.1 sourcing from loopback 0, I can ping it, and it works all day long. That's what you're expecting to see. So that's what I wanted you guys to see in a full rollout deployment, is how that comes into play and how the migration would look. It's not clean, for sure, but the point now is we have a better routing protocol deployed than we did before with RIP. So we're in good shape there. So from there, our next stage would be to take a look at more capabilities. Like I believe I saw some summaries. On switch 7, we're going to go through and we're going to have to do some default routing on, and I'll show you guys how that works on the HQ side. But if I go back over to, I think, switch 1, do show IP route, I believe I saw a couple of summaries coming through. That might have been a RIP specific config. But now we have a EIGRP specific operation. We have reachability to everything, everybody's happy, so we're in good shape. So that is pretty much what I wanted to show you in this video, and that's what we're going to do moving forward. I'm going to be showing you how to migrate, what your process would look like. This is a lab environment, so I'm not like, it's not like I'm going in ahead of time and testing out what we're doing so that it's super clean. You would, in a real world scenario, you would have had all those mapped out, you would know all the caveats, you would have checked ahead of things, you would have done your homework. You would have set a lab up similar to this, not maybe this size, but a smaller lab, but you would have gone through all the steps to make this happen, and you would know, okay, when we do this, this is going to happen. And you'd have like I used to have a spreadsheet that I would have for my method of procedures. What am I going to do? Where am I going to do it? When am I going to do it? All that type of stuff. I'd have all that information laid out in a spreadsheet so that somebody could reference that. I'd be like, okay, I'm on line 16. This is what we're going to go do. And then I have a Word doc that would be mapped to the spreadsheet that would be configured for the actual syntax that I'm going to be using. So I'd be able to, you could do that inside the spreadsheet too, but I had the Word doc so that you would have a migration process. So a lot of customers that I worked with, because I was a third-party consultant, I would end up having to give that, and they would use that as their documentation for Change Advisory Board, or CAB. That would go to CAB, and they would have the configuration in front of them. I would have had the conversation with the customer to make sure that they understood what they were going to do, the process and all that type of stuff. They'd have as much documentation as we could provide them. Because the reality of it is, an implementation engineer's job is, it's an 80-20 rule, right? You do 80% of the work up front, so that when you have to do the actual, billable 20% that you actually had to implement, it looks like you did your job, right? Not everything can be demoed ahead of time. I realize that. Well, Rob, what about VXLAN or ACI? Or, yeah, I get it. There's things that you won't be able to demonstrate. But for the things that you can, that's one thing that I strived to do, is I would have server stuff spun up. I'd have labs built like this so that I'd be able to make sure that things were working the way I would expect them to. So if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, feedback, drop that in the comment section below. If you haven't already done so, please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll catch all of you awesome people in the next video. Have a good one, everybody.